Okay, peace be with you. And we're going to start with a prayer that has to do with the merging of heavens and earth. And that's key to understanding all spiritual teachings, because it has to be very much applicable to our life here on the earth. Ishemikud Kudasharbihu Ushihinte. Be Ilo or Imulaya Chemika Belovke. Be Risham Shem Kozrael Kolom. Amen. The last few weeks I've been talking about when God is out of the picture, anything goes. And that's what we're seeing in society today. But guess what? It's been going on for hundreds and hundreds of years. There's nothing new here. I was very inspired by the story of Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who amazingly was able to survive the Stalin communism in Russia, which probably killed from 1917 to 1953 about 66 million people, plus maybe another 30 million from the Germans. So it's like Russians were hit very heavily. And he spent 8 years in the Gulag and 3 years in prison before he was exiled and he came to the United States. And I would just say God had to be with him because he wasn't one of those 66 million people who were killed. I'll put it that way. Now, he was asked in 1978 to give a talk at the Harvard graduation commencement. And he gave a talk. At that time, I'll just say he was already a Nobel Prize winner for his great, incredible literature. And he gave a talk that wasn't so well received. How come? Because he gave a very, very deep critique of American, I'm going to say British history and where we were. I particularly appreciate it because I love history, and I was a student of Henry Still Commager. Most people don't know him, but he's considered one of the greatest American historians. And so I really studied a lot with him when I was at Amherst College. Just really appreciate it. So what he said is if we forget history, we don't really have much understanding of what's happening, and we keep making the same mistakes. Now, how many times we've heard that? But let's go a little further what he meant by mistakes. Okay? A cardinal mistake, he pointed out, which is not what people want to hear, is we put a tremendous emphasis on individual rights, but not very much emphasis on individual responsibilities, which is the key context. Okay? And those responsibilities, as he points out, are the God-given guidelines. So in this society, we're talking about the 10 speakings of the 10 commandments. And if we can't hold that responsibility that way, everything goes into chaos, which is exactly what we're seeing today. People say, well, who cares about history? As if that's the line. And then worse, nobody really wants to study history, but we can't really understand what's going on. But then he adds two other points that I think is critical. And it's called, one is called the connection with God, and the third point is spiritual courage. I didn't use the word spiritual courage, I'm using that word. If we do not have the courage to stand up for the alignment of our responsibilities, our spiritual responsibilities, to balance the idea of individual rights, it all goes upside down, which is exactly what we're seeing in our society today. So it was a very penetrating analysis. So we can't really be free if we don't understand history. We can't really be free if we aren't free to express or have that spiritual courage. And historically speaking, the fall of nations and the fall of people spiritually is when we don't manifest spiritual courage to stand up for the truth. So Solzhenitsyn, that was his big thing. He really stood up for the truth in a very pure way. Now that got him, as they say, 8 years in the Gulag, and 3 years in prison. But the bigger critical point is he stood up for the truth. And when he spoke at Harvard and stood up for the truth, Nobel Prize winners, people didn't want to hear it. Because the truth really meant we had to align ourselves with the deep spiritual truths throughout history. And in that way, create a balance between individual rights and our upholding the individual responsibilities that is aligned with the great spiritual teachings. And for this society, it was founded on the Torah, or what we call the Bible. Other societies, it's the yama and niyamas, do's and don'ts, like in the Hindu, or the eightfold path of the Buddhist. In other words, these are very fundamental deep things. But to express them when God is being forced to be taken out of the picture requires the spiritual courage and spiritual insight. So those are profound insights. I mean, that's really profound. And it's very simple, but it completely speaks to what we're having in our society. Because in our society, which is worked very hard to get God out of the picture and have political correctness, PC, which is actually political control, PC, you get chaos. Because people say whatever they want, and you have the power of a postmodern world, we call the globalist, that emphasize materialism above spiritual growth, and the theory of equal goods and so forth to everyone, but in fact that never happens. In fact, what Solzhenitsyn really pointed out is the people who rose to power in Russia, and I think we have to be clear that's no different than anywhere else, were thugs. Just think about that. That's what he called them, all the way up to Stalin. Thug, and because they're clever enough, sociopaths and psychopaths, to move to the top because they don't have any actually higher goals than their material well-being. Very, very profound teaching that this is his teaching, and that's what happens when you take God out of the picture and anything goes. And when he said that, after he said that at Harvard, his popularity went down. Well, because he's speaking the truth. His popularity, and he spoke with courage. So this only works, individual rights in the constitutional way that are actually aligned with the great biblical teachings, only works if we have the spiritual courage to take that responsibility and fulfill it. In that way, there is real freedom. There is no freedom being a drug addict. There is no freedom being addicted to pornography. It doesn't really work. But if we just focus on individual rights, then all that's fine. Do whatever. but it misses the point entirely. And that profound analysis, I mean, that's really profound. It's like God also had the individual responsibility to go along with the individual freedom. Otherwise, everything begins not only going to chaos, it goes into the dark side. So this is the final point that he made that people didn't want to hear. So what's the final point? It's really interesting that in the modern world, and clearly in the Soviet paradigm, so to speak, but really the paradigm here, is the problem isn't with humans. Humans are fine. The problem is with the social system. That is proven to be a complete nonsense. Okay? Because what we saw, that's why I use the word thought, is you created a new social system that was going to make it work, and it got worse. Think about that. So, his point is, there is a dark side to humans that doesn't fit with the humanist thinking that everything's good and beautiful. And that dark side needs to be disciplined. That dark side needs to be matured into the light. But if we don't make the effort and say anything goes, it's all cool. And if you don't like what you're hearing, you can just be offended or whatever rather than looking at it. This is really important. So that was the final point that really makes it important and doesn't make him very popular when he gave that, is that we have to acknowledge the dark side in humanity. In the Torah we talk about the good angel and bad angel, but the dark side's there. And we have to live in a way that begins to transform it into the light. But you can't do that if you don't acknowledge it. And that's what he was pointing out. There really is a dark side, okay? And let's acknowledge it, and let's work with it. And let's organize our schools that way, and let's create a spiritual discipline of how we live in a way that really uplifts humanity. But we can't be uplifted if we ignore there's a dark side to work on. So may everyone be blessed that we're willing to not just confront our dark side, but have the spiritual courage, second point, to transform it into the light. Shalom, 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 shanti, 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 Om Taikavasa.